Hi there, everybody. I'm going to explain to you what a counterargument is, and the goal is that this week you will be able to understand a counterargument and then post a counterargument in the forum this week using any arguments from our reading so far, and then using a counterargument in your rough draft. So let me explain what it is. You might remember what a counterargument is because you've been exposed to it last week when you guys read about different types of evidence and the purpose for using evidence. So one purpose is to provide a counterargument. So what is a counterargument? It is a powerful move that writers make, and speakers actually, in debates. It's a persuasive move, okay? And it consists usually of two steps. First of all, you want to bring the other side, the opposing side of your argument up. So if you see in this little picture here, you're talking about what other people would say, what people would say against you, right? Against your argument. And then the second thing you do is you turn it around using evidence and you squash it. That's right, you squash it. So the purpose in this is that by presenting the opposing viewpoint, it gives you credibility as a writer because it shows you have considered both sides of your argument. And therefore, it really makes your argument sound more convincing, right? You're not just presenting a one-sided, linear argument throughout your paper. You're showing a more well-balanced perspective, okay? So let's look at an example. We'll start with Fareed's Zakaria. Okay, so let's break this down. So Zakaria argues that American public schools are a disaster and we need to reform them. We need to give them more money. We need to, reform, make major changes. So what do the critics say? The critics might say that Steve Jobs dropped out of college and became a famous technologist and millionaire. So the opposing idea is that if you drop out of school, you can still become rich and successful. Okay, so I would bring up the opposing argument and then turn it around. Yet, Steve Jobs still went to high school, and when he graduated from the K-12 system in 1972, we want to make it factual, California students were the top in the country. Now they are at California schools, were the top in the country, and now they are at the bottom. And I want to include my citation. Okay, so I've got what the critics say, and then I turn it around, and I squash it with evidence. And here's what it would look like in a paper. While some say that you can still become rich and successful without an education, as Steve Jobs did, it is important to remember that he still completed high school in 1972, and when he was in high school, California schools were the strongest in the country. Now they are at the bottom. And maybe I would follow up with, this shows that we need to reform our schools immediately. So I bring up the other side, I squash it with evidence, and then I explain or I restate my main point. Okay, that's what it looks like. It could be a paragraph, a whole paragraph in your essay, or maybe it's just a couple of sentences. Okay, let's look at another example from Hancock's article. So Hancock makes an argument that the United States should look at Finland's schools as a model for successful education. And we want to consider what the critics might say. They might say that Many people feel that Finland's methods could not be applied to the US because it's a smaller country with a more homogeneous population. Okay, so there's the opposite side. Then I want to turn it around. While it's true that Finland is much smaller, Norway, which is Finland's neighbor, is the same size and their PISA scores are just as low as the United States scores. This proves that successful pedagogy has nothing to do with size. And so that's me turning it around, and if I wanted to incorporate it in my paper, then I could write this kind of sentence here, right? While critics argue that Finland's success is attributed to its small population and could never work in the US, opposing side, turn it around. One can look at Norway, which is as small as Finland. Norway's PISA scores are as low as the scores in the US. That comes from Hancock, so I need the citation there. And I follow it up with some analysis, right? This proves that successful pedagogy has nothing to do with size. Or I'll be more specific, with a country's size. Okay, so that's a counterargument and a really, really great tool to use to persuade your readers. So here, let me offer you some language for counterarguments because there are lots of ways of doing this. You could say, while critics say that, da 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 da, but da 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 da. Or it may be true that, dot dot dot, however, dot dot dot. Or here's a fancy one. There is some validity to the argument that, dot dot dot, yet, dot dot dot. Or another take on that. Some experts believe, dot dot dot. On the other hand, dot dot dot. So you've got lots of variations of these templates here that you can use for your counter argument. So now it's your turn. You can think about the solutions you proposed in your paper. What would a critic say to refute your points, and how can you turn that idea around? You can also consider any arguments that have been made, but don't use the ones I just used. Use your own. So come up with a counter argument for your solution or to an argument we've read, right? And post it to the forum because I want to see that you guys understand the concept and can apply it. Thanks for listening. Let me know if you have any questions.